Good afternoon, St. George. This is Michael Harding with On the Arts, the show where we're trying to blow the lid off of all of these little secrets we have around St. George, all of these little things that we wish weren't secrets. We want people to know about the shows that are going on, about the opportunities they have to experience the painting and the sculpture of some of our wonderful artists. Also to hear some of the beautiful music that we have, not only vocal music with several different musical groups, but also some instrumental music, as well as original compositions. We also have some writers that we're going to be bringing on the show. Now, the last few weeks, we certainly have been theater heavy, but I think that's a testament to the fact that there is so much wonderful theater around. We've had people like Jamie Young, the artistic director of Brigham's Playhouse. We've had Michael Donbar, who is the education director of the Utah Shakespeare Festival. And I'm proud to say that we have two local folks who have done a lot of theater around here. Now, I always like to start out with just a little bit of a story of my own personal experiences with these folks. And first of all, I do have to ask your forgiveness. Christina, my lovely, lovely wife, is unable to be here with us today, but I know that she's listening as well as watching live on Facebook. If you go to Radio St. George, you'll be able to see a live stream of this, and it'll also be archived for later on. As well, you can check us out with live streaming on YouTube. But anyhow, the two people that I've got in the studio with me right now, I'll start with a lovely lady named Jane Williams.
Oh, thank you.
Now, I have to tell you, Jane has been very active in the Southern Utah theater scene for a while, and my personal story about Jane is I went to see a show called Steel Magnolias. Now, Steel Magnolias was just performed not too long ago at the Center for the Performing Arts at Kayenta, but a lot of people don't realize that it was also performed a few years ago at the Neil Simon Festival. And I had a student at the time named Whitney Morgan, who's now Whitney Morgan Cox, and she was playing Shelby, one of the, or I should say probably the secondary lead role in the show. And I went to see her, and I didn't know anybody else. I was relatively new to St. George. And there's a character named Weezer in Steel Magnolias. Now, Weezer, I could lie and say that Weezer is a charming, charming lady, but that would be a very serious lie, a very serious transgression, if you will. Weezer is one of the, not hardest-hearted, because she actually does have a very soft heart, but one of the crustiest exteriors of a character that I have ever dealt with or ever seen. And I saw this show, and I saw Jane Williams. I'd never seen her before, and I have to say I did not like her very much, mainly because it was the character. And I thought, well, okay, she's one of those actresses, and, I'll never see her again. Well, it was actually that Christmas, after I had seen that show in the summer, and I was trying to get some packages off to some folks at the UPS store. And, I had my packages ready to go, and I turned around, and in came Jane Williams. And I thought, oh, boy, this is going to be, she's going to be one of these ornery, Christmas shoppers just like Weezer. And I have to say, I stood there looking at her for the longest time, and she looked over at me, and she had this smile, and I was like, oh, she's deceitful. Yeah, she's going to try and draw me in with her smile. And, of course, the lines were rather long for this Christmas. And I'll tell you that we actually did start talking. I was very hesitant because I was like, oh, my gosh, she's going to bite my head off or something. And I'm happy to say that we had a tremendously good time. It wasn't a fantastically long conversation, but I remember laughing with her and saying, oh my gosh, this woman is really, really nice. And I thought to myself, first of all, I felt ashamed because being an actor myself, I know that we are not our characters. But that was the beginning of what I consider to be a very good friendship now. And I always wanted to work with Jane. And I'm happy to say that I am actually on my second occasion of working with her directly. I was able to direct her at St. George Musical Theater. This was last year for the show Over the River and Through the Woods. And she was absolutely marvelous in that, a joy to work with. And I'm also working with her now. She is playing, again, a crusty character.
Oh, nasty.
A nasty, crusty character
nasty.
in the play Flowers for Algernon, which is also going to be performing at the Center for the Performing Arts at Kayenta. This will be opening a week from today, as a matter of fact, September 13th at 7:30. And just to lay out the dates for this, it'll be Thursday and Friday, the 13th and the 14th at 7:30. And then on Saturday, the 15th, there'll be a 2 p.m. matinee. And then the following week, starting on Wednesday, there will be a 7:30 performance, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday the 22nd, and also another matinee on Saturday the 22nd at 2 p.m. We hope you'll check this out. Many of you have experienced the story of Flowers for Algernon from your school days. It's a very, very touching story, which actually takes me to our second guest here in the studio, and this is Kelly Olson. Now, I have to say, it was a little later that I became acquainted with Kelly. I have to say, the first time that I saw Kelly, and this is only in the theater will you ever have a story like this, I went to the theater and watched him kiss my wife. And I have to say...
Wait. I kissed you in the play, too, and your wife had to watch that.
Well, absolutely, but that was after we all knew each other and such, so that was okay. Yes, everybody's out there saying, my child will never go into theater at this point. But I have to say, it was for a charming production of The Music Man at St. George Musical Theater. And it's interesting how most of the people I know, the first time I saw them, they were playing crusty or evil characters. And Kelly Olson played Charlie Cowell, who is frustrated beyond belief that people won't see how bad Harold Hill is and how good he is. And like I said, there is a scene where he does have to kiss Marion, the librarian, who my wife played. And I'm happy to say it was a wonderful performance. And Kelly, it's a pleasure to be your friend now. At the time, yes. I did not know you. But
same.
Fantastic. And also, Kelly Olson, also a prominent dentist here in town. Now, that's my introduction to these two. And Kelly is actually playing Charlie in Flowers for Algernon, the lead, and is doing quite a remarkable job, I have to say. It's been wonderful watching both Kelly and Jane throughout the years perform, and I think that's something that's wonderful about the theater. You get to watch people and their performances mature. You get to see them explore different aspects of themselves with the characters, and in a tight-knit community like this where you have experienced people, what a wonderful thing to be a part of. I know I've grown as an artist working with these two, and I've watched them do different things and grow and deliver some pretty amazing work. So that is my introduction. Welcome to On the Arts, Jane and Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, both of you actually...
That was pretty glowing, don't you think? We can go
right.
home.
Let's just go.
We can
That's
go
right.
home.
Thank you for joining us for On the Arts. We will now close out. No, I have to say, we had a conversation before about what is the format of this show. And in fact, I hope you don't mind me sharing, Jane, last night,
Nope.
you had a little bit of apprehension. Mm-hmm. You're saying, so you're going to ask me questions and I answer them? What is this? And we actually had a little conversation before we got on the air as well. And please know that the purpose of On the Arts, yes, we'll plug some shows. Yes, we'll talk about what you're doing and hopefully promote. But this is just an opportunity for Southern Utah to get to know some of these wonderful artists that we have around. So the format of this show can simply be summed up as, let's get to know you. Now, I want to start with Jane on this. Jane, you are quite the world traveler.
Yep,
Gotcha.
I am. I enjoy travel very, very much. I can live out of a suitcase.
And
very
you actually
easily.
haven't you,
Yes.
for quite a while?
Very
Not that
easily.
you're homeless, but...
No.
Well, let's see. So you're quite the traveler now, but you're also not from St. George.
No.
Where are you from?
I'm originally from a little teeny town called Blackfoot, Idaho. It's right by the Fort Hall Indian Reservation in Idaho. So I went to school with a lot of Indians and had friends that were Indians, and it was really fun. The culture that you gained from that is really a wonderful experience. And growing up in a small town, too, you know what everybody's doing, and, of course, they know what you're doing as well.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell
No secrets.
everybody knows everybody's business.
Yes.
I grew up in a cow town, as a matter of fact, in Virginia, Gainesville, which is right outside of Manassas.
Oh, yeah.
And my brother and I, we used to play on the Battle of Manassas Field from the Civil War. We found bullets and things like that all the time. Now, growing up in a small town, like you were saying, being in theater, that wasn't necessarily the joy of everybody. Being in theater made you a little odd, I would say. And by the way, my high school, we didn't have air conditioning. This was a cow town. My high school was 6th through 12th. And we didn't have, I love telling this story, we did not have snow days. We had cow pie days. And that was where we always knew we were going to get out of school early because, of course, there was no air conditioning. and we had to have the windows open. And we knew when our buses brought us in, if there was a herd of cows close to the school, we knew they were going to let us out. What was your experience being in such a small town? And I believe you mentioned your first role being in kindergarten?
Mm-hmm. My first role. I was in kindergarten, and I was a snowflake. And the part of the play, we jumped up and down like we were falling, and then we had to hit the ground and do a somersault. Well, this is in the olden days where the girls wore dresses. They didn't wear pants, you know. So the teacher said, okay, now you're going to hit the ground and do a somersault. And I watched all these girls do that, and their little panties. Can I say that on there?
Well, if you can't, we'll be shut down pretty soon.
All right, well, I'll look out of the corner of my eye for the police. Anyway, so I told my mother, I said, my underwear shows, I can't do that. And my mother says, yes, you can. Do it. Be a good snowflake, but just crawl off. So I did. I jumped up and down while everybody was showing their underwear. I just crawled off to the corner in a snowdrift or wherever we were supposed to go. And that was my first starring role.
Got it. And please know, those of you who are listening out there, we are not advocating just taking the choreography into your own hands
exactly.
When you're doing these shows.
It has to be a good reason.
Right. Well, Kelly, how did you get started? I mean, we have the snowflake. The weather was Jane's inspiration to get out there. What about you, Kelly?
I did a road show. We remember those,
yes.
right, at church when we traveled around to the different and met up at the Stake Center. So I did a road show, and it gave me a little flavor for what theater was like, and so I wanted to explore that and see if I had more interest. And so in high school, when I got to high school and had an opportunity to do a play, I auditioned, and that's when I did the first musical that I did, which was South Pacific.
Got it. And that's
What character were you?
I was one of the sailors. I'm probably sailor number 3.
Nothing
I don't know.
like the name.
Of course, loved it. And so a lot of nostalgia, a lot of connection with that show. And so I was excited to be able to direct South Pacific, which is actually showing at Brigham's Playhouse right now. And just turned out wonderfully, and was just wonderful to experience that on this end. And then the first starring role, I guess you would say, was we had a one-act play festival at our school. Our high school was very unique. We had 9 full-length productions a year.
Wow.
And it wasn't a theater school. We had a stage productions class, which just started when I became a junior. We did 5 productions. That class did 5 productions. That was all you did all year.
That's a lot.
Then you had the fall musical, the spring show, which was a non-musical. That's 7.
Right.
Then the junior production. And then the last one, the 9th, was a one-act play festival directed by students. And so that one-act play festival, you auditioned, and then the 4 directors got together and just picked, right? And if the next actor you wanted was around when your turn came, then you got that actor. So my first role, and I'd love to know if you know this show, my first starring role was playing Billy Baxter in The Incredible Bulk at Bikini Beach.
The Incredible Bulk at Bikini Beach.
And so obviously
that's
a spoof on the
showstopper, isn't
Incredible
it?
Hulk. And so I played David Banner's character, you know, his doppelganger, Billy Baxter.
Right.
And the way it transformed is I would run off stage when I got angry, and then this other actor in a green box, giant green box, would come running on. And so, I mean, and from that moment, it was just South Pacific was a great experience.
Wow.
But then after that, it's, it gets in your blood. And
How do you beat
heart.
being an Avenger, for Pete's sake? You
Yeah,
know?
That's
really,
right.
in a box.
That's how I got started.
Well,
Then it was
in the high school I went to, it was so small. The English class did the high, like the honors English. They're the ones that did the play every year. And then as time went on, they did a senior production. And that was pretty much it. So when I was a freshman in high school, we auditioned and we did Harvey.
Oh, yeah.
And that was my first role. I played Mrs. Ethel Chauvenet, and she's the first one that meets Harvey.
I can see this, actually.
Well, and then just this last January, I had the opportunity to do the same role with Wilford Brimley. and he played the lead role of Elwood P. Dowd. So it was really fun.
You did a little
to do
older
a
version this time, right?
Yeah, really older version.
It wasn't too out of the norm
No,
for
no.
him to see.
Yeah. But
If you're listening, Mr. Brimley, I apologize.
Yes, me too. But it was wonderful to go full circle. And when I told him that, he really laughed. He says, well, I hope this doesn't mean this is the end. I thought, oh, me too. But,
You don't ever want it to be the end.
No. But that was and then the first musical I saw was when I was a junior or senior in high school. I can't remember which. They put us on a bus and took us to Idaho State University at Pocatello. And we saw Call Me Madam, the one that Ethel Merman had done on Broadway. And I thought that was the most marvelous thing I had ever seen in my life. And then the following fall, they took us there to see Annie Get Your Gun. Again, it was the most marvelous thing I'd ever seen. I told my mom that that's what I wanted to do, and they were very supportive. So the theater, boy, once you get that applause, it's, and you hear it and you see people do it and you think, oh, I can do that. Do you ever do that? Go to plays, maybe you just do, and think, I could do that, but I would do it better. I would do it.
Oh,
do you
of course.
do that?
How can
Do
you
do
not?
that?
You have to look and see what's happening and see something and some you see just it's top notch. That's it. I mean, that's all there is. I saw Robinson May in Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder on Broadway. Just amazing.
yeah. I saw that
but
too,
then you
yeah.
see other roles and you think, I would choose to do that differently. And that's what's fun about directing, as you know. You can say, I would do that differently. When you get to direct a show, you can do it differently. Then it's sink or swim, right? But yeah, of course, you're that's the artist in you about how you want to express yourself. So
Exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
there's that common joke out there. How many actors does it take to change a light bulb? It takes, 100. One to do it, 99 to say how they could do it better.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's right. Of course.
Well, and that's where, Kelly, you have done a significant amount of directing around here. In fact, you're building quite a name for yourself as a director,
thank
having
you.
directed at many of the local venues, actually. And I'm not sure if this was clear earlier, but Kelly is the director of the current production at South Pacific. When we had Jamie Young here on the show, we mentioned that, and that was right around the opening of South Pacific. And you've mentioned, Jane, that there's this full circle thing with the theater. How many shows have you guys done over and over and over again?
A lot. I've done Steel Magnolias 2 or 3 times. Well, and I've done Nonsense so much that I finally ordered my own habit. It's in the garage. So if you're doing Nonsense, I'm your Reverend Mother. Got the costume in my garage. So
It's
we're
become
good
a
to go.
habit for you to do that.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, for me, I really haven't done a lot of shows twice, just South Pacific. And ironically, same year, just right after at Flowers for Algernon.
Right.
In high school, that was my junior production. I played Charlie. And what a powerful role, and always wanted to play it when I was age appropriate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And so this opportunity came about. And so this is the only other show that I've done more than once.
Well, I have to tell you, working on, as the director of Flowers for Algernon this time around, part of being in the arts is the relationship that you get to build with people and such. And I have to say, this has been a wonderfully collaborative experience. And first of all, I have to thank you both as actors, and I thank my entire cast for trusting what we're doing in telling this story. But how wonderful that we have a group of people that listen to each other and think, well, what about this? Or, when you're asked to do something, you're like, oh, okay, I'll give that a try. And then something else comes from that, a great idea. A perfect example last night, Kelly, when we were moving people around and I was doing some blocking and such, you came over. And it was so wonderful. And there's not a single diva in this cast. It's really wonderful. And you just came over and said, well, I feel like I should go over here. And if we had a diva director or another diva actor, they may say, no, this is how we did it or what have you. But everybody's been very, very open to expressing their ideas. Even John Blasco, who's turning out to be a wonderful, wonderful actor.
He's wonderful, isn't he? I love him.
But he's such a nice guy, though, and he's playing not a nice guy. And I have to keep saying, be more clinical, be more mean. But everybody's working together to make a wonderful, wonderful production.
And that's true. That's true. It is, for lack of a better term, a team sport, because you really do build relationships. And some of my very closest dear friends I've met in the theater. And you trust each other.
Yeah, you do. I mean, the fun thing about this production, I wanted to do this and mentioned that I was one of the producers for this show because I really wanted to do it and approached Jan Broberg at KDXI, and it turned out that we could do the production. And of course, when I did it in school, in high school, which was, 10 years ago?
I think we're coming up on the 10-year reunion.
That's right. Just past the 31, right?
The 10-year reunion of the 30th reunion.
That's right. That's right. So when we did it, it was more traditional with the sets and the set pieces and the areas and those things. And so wanting to do the show was the character, the way the character I felt as the character and wanting to express that and kind of do a do-over, if you will, with all the things I've learned. And so in my mind, kind of envisioned something similar, a little different. So then when everything panned out, Michael obviously is the director, and when we had the first cast meeting, we had a production meeting, and then the cast meeting, and Michael started to share his vision of the show. It was not anything like I had envisioned. That's not a bad thing. It's completely different, and different in such an amazing, fun way, because this show, it's so much more about the feeling of the characters, the experiences of the characters, the experience of Charlie and what happened in his life and how he has to evolve into a normal thinking person from a very simplistic man to a very, very complex man, and how that affects him now that he can actually process these things. And the less is more feel. Very simple sets, and it doesn't take away from the story at all. It adds to it because we get to experience that. How fun to experience it in such a different way, and it truly is more about the message of the show. It's so deep and so meaningful, and it's been wonderful to experience that.
Well,
I think so too. I think the way you have got it arranged, if it were done in the traditional style, I agree with Kelly. I think it would be very distracting. But the way it's done, the way we're doing it, boy, it just builds and builds, and there's no distraction from the story and the emotion that's going on. And I think the audience will become extremely involved. I think it's just wonderful.
Well, I'll tell you, one of my absolute favorite moments, and we talk about the trust that artists have, the director, the actors, everything. There is a beautiful moment that involves both of you and another fantastic actor, Rich Hill, who teaches at Hurricane High School and is quite a fine craftsman in his own right. But there's a scene that's a flashback. That's a memory for Charlie. And, we mentioned that your character, Jane, is not the most likable of individuals. And she certainly doesn't treat Charlie very well.
Maybe mention that I play his mother.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And not a very nice mother by any means. And I wish you guys could see the picture that you've created out there. And Kelly, we had a conversation about eyes up and things like that, and you're looking up at the audience, and the audience is just watching Charlie listen and remember. And it's so simple, but Jane, as you're in the back reenacting in a stylistic way what happened, you can hear in rehearsal, a lot of times people are shuffling around, they're looking at their script and things. That moment, last night particularly, I don't know if you could feel it, but that entire room just stopped.
Oh, well,
and that was the energy that you guys had. You could have heard a pin drop just because of the intensity and the simplicity of both of you listening and living in the moment. It was tremendous.
Well, that's very nice to hear, and thank you. And I think part that contributes to that is we're not cluttering it up with, cluttering maybe is not the proper word, but with scenery. You don't have scenery to depend on. You don't have props except very minimum. And so all you've got is you and the character that you become and telling your character's story. And
we're not hiding the fact that we're a group of actors by any means.
Yeah, I love that part.
Well, and that's, for me, storytelling and such, and especially a story that's powerful like this, it's almost like you have those great joke tellers, or you have that family member that tells the history of the family and such. They don't do it with props. They don't, bring in their road show into the family gatherings and say that. They just come in and they start telling the story, and everybody's riveted.
Yeah.
why is theater any different? Now, that doesn't mean great sets can't be wonderful, that spectacle can't be wonderful, but what a great opportunity to tell stories and to invite the audience to come in with you.
And to forget reality for a while.
Yeah.
That's the part I like the best. You know, for 2.5 hours or however long it is, they can leave their troubles at the door and come and join us and see somebody else's life. Maybe they'll appreciate their own when they leave, but
Right.
you know, but it's wonderful to get wrapped up in somebody else's thoughts and feelings, and the emotion comes across the footlights. And I think that's the part I like about theater too. You don't get that in movies.
No.
In movies, if you goof it up, they stop and do it again. But in theater, you see it. Everybody has to be on the same page for 2.5 hours. Everybody concentrating and working together to tell the story. And it's made up of little individual stories. You know, I have a story as the mother, and he has a story as Charlie, and we just mesh them together, which is like real life.
Yeah.
You know?
It is. It's fun when you say that it's live, unlike the movies. And I've done some film as well, and that's the fun thing about theater. I directed South Pacific. I'm one of those directors that likes to watch the shows I direct. I know Jamie Young, it stresses him out to watch it.
Right.
And we've had that conversation. We laugh about it. He's tense because he knows what's supposed to be. And they're wonderful, but he likes to back off and do that. And he'll still watch the show, and we've had a fun time talking about that. I like to watch the show, and certainly I know there's things that maybe, okay, that was done differently, but however, to see the changes that the actors bring. In fact, Michael mentioned this last night. He's helping us. This is where I want you to tell the story. He guides us how to tell the story, and then the actors give what they do to the story. But every single night of those productions, you have the same script, you have the same characters, but every show is different.
That's right.
And that's what's so fun about it. The feel, just a different experience every night with the same words and the same people.
Don't you think the audience enters into that as well?
Absolutely.
If you have a good audience support, you're going to kill to do a good show. But if you have one that's a yawner, oh, please, let's just do this and go home and watch TV.
Well, and the interesting thing about that is we as actors we're coached and directed, and in most shows, I mean, virtually in all shows, to have a high amount of energy. Now, that doesn't mean all flamboyant, all this.
Screaming the
it could
whole
be
time.
just quiet energy, but high energy to express that outwardly so that it goes to the back of the room. And some of the audiences don't have that. Some of the very nice, these wonderful people that live in communities that are for the older folks, right?
Well, who?
Jane.
Stop.
But
I'm really
It's
not
your
that
friends,
old.
Jane, not you,
The
but
home
your
was
friends.
a goodbye. Come
Well,
on.
you know, if they express themselves,
don't have to do yard work.
Yeah,
Come on.
they express themselves differently sometimes.
Yeah.
And with not as much laughter and loudness. And after the show, they enjoyed it just as much as everybody else did. But we as actors are so used to feeding off of that
We
loud,
want-
right, the expressivity of the
Right.
audience, and so we have to pull from a different place to do that.
Well, I think there's always been this assumption with a lot of actors that I know, not all of them, but if you're losing the audience or if you have an audience like that, speed up, drive. And that's exactly, I found to be the wrong thing to do. You got to slow down. And just as you expect the audience to listen to you, you've got to be listening to the audience.
Yeah.
And if they don't want a show preached at them and yelled at them, you got to hear that. And you have to have like you were saying, Jane, I'm building on it a little bit, but a conversation with the audience.
right.
And how wonderful to have a present conversation and present your story. And to me, it's just like, you go out with somebody and sometimes, it's just a conversation that you have, you've spoken words at each other. But do you know those moments when you're talking to someone and you connect? And those are so
Right.
special. How wonderful for actors to have the opportunity to try and get that every night with a room full of people.
And it takes energy, and people don't realize that. And I've talked to some of my friends who don't do theater, but they come and enjoy it. And I say, after a show, I'm just worn out, and I'm hungry, and you just can't go home and go to bed. You have to come down, and that's because it takes so much energy to tell the story.
It's amazing how hungry you are after a show.
Yeah.
I mean, really, after a show, it's like, I am starving because all that you've put out there, it drains you in a great way, right? In a good way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had the pleasure of working with a guy named Robin McFarka, and he was a fight choreographer at a theater that I was working at, and he's from Chicago. And he works with a theater called Steppenwolf, which, of course, was, we know some people from that, John Malkovich and Gary Sinise and Laurie Metcalf, some names of people who've been doing a lot. And they were doing there a production of Streetcar Named Desire. And Gary Sinise was playing Stanley Kowalski. Well, a very intense, animalistic guy. Well, when Robin went to see the show, and he loves telling me the story, and many stories about like John Malkovich and such. We're just going to have a show about these other actors, I think. But with Gary Sinise, he saw him and he said, "Man, Gary, you are ripped. You've been going to the gym and what have you." And Gary's like, "No, I'm just playing Stanley Kowalski." The intensity that's necessary for that, it takes so much energy. It's like he's doing constant isometric exercise and such, and it actually got him in shape. So if you don't like going to the gym, ladies and gentlemen, go try out for a play.
Do Streetcar Named Desire.
Right.
That's right.
But let me ask the two of you, both of you, we've been talking Flowers for Algernon, and yes, we definitely want people to experience this with us, and I'll be giving more information at the end of the show as well. But both of you have done a significant amount of musical theater work. And, of course, Flowers for Algernon, we are doing the play version. There is a musical version out there, and actually several different versions in telling of the story, but this is not a musical. Let me ask you, what's the difference between working on a musical such as South Pacific, or in a musical, Music Man, or in a musical like Guys and Dolls, and working on Flowers for Algernon?
Yeah, well, first of all, the musical, you start with the music. You got to learn the music. Then you get the choreography to add to it. You got to have the choreography, and you've got to marry those two, and then you have the dialogue, and you've got
And I don't mean to interrupt, but that's trickier than people think.
Yeah.
To learn that music and then put the choreography to it. That's harder than it thinks.
You know the music, and as soon as you start moving your body,
your brain goes to
did I learn this music?
Yeah, oh my gosh. Go.
Yeah. It takes a while to get the two together till it's, muscle memory, and then you can do it.
Yeah, so you have those that you've got to focus on and always do your music and your choreography, and then you have your lines that you do, and then you have to share that with all of them and how to work the song into the story so it makes sense. You're not just out there, let's just sing a song. It's got to work with the story and have all those other talents to go along with it as well. And so doing a straight show, which is we call the non-musicals basically, like Flowers for Algernon, this version is, the focus can be on the character. And it is in a musical as well, however, you have to learn those other elements. But being able to focus on the character, and for some people that don't like musicals, or they don't feel like they're talented enough, or can't dance or sing.
Why are those people singing? Why did they just burst into song?
That's right. And so it's great to have another avenue for people to have theater that don't feel like they can do the musicals. But to prepare for this, it's about the character work and focusing on that. And it's almost like a breather that I can just focus on the character and what he's going through, instead of, I got to add the musical part to it. So they're both wonderful in different ways, but so nice to work with the character work. And another kind of nice bonus is there's not usually quite as many rehearsals because you don't have the choreo and music to learn as well.
Well, I do have to say, I've heard from a few of the actors, and I haven't heard from the two of you yet. I'll say. But the way we've done this rehearsal process, there's been very little repetition. It's been, putting things on its feet and changing things around. And we do have opening night coming up quickly.
Yes.
And I've had more than one conversation with folks saying, oh my gosh, we're not going to have time to repeat. How do we learn to, act these scenes? And I have to tell you, because this isn't a musical, I see a marvelous opportunity here. It's not about being precise with the notes or being precise with the choreography. There have been amazing moments in rehearsal, such as the one that I mentioned earlier, that will be there. Acting is so much simpler than we think. And it's such a pleasure to know, I know I need to move here. I know this scene is going to happen here. Let's play and get in there. It's not about getting it right. We never will. It's
Well, I think that's the thing actors really get. They don't want to forget their line.
Right.
And I think they really try to do it the way the author wrote it, exactly. But sometimes that's tricky when you're doing the emotion. Well, what I was telling you earlier, sometimes I just get so wrapped up in my emotion that I've got. I know the concept.
Line flies away.
The lines come out differently, but it's the same concept. And so you kind of have to pull that back a little and memorize the line. And you get that with repetition, doing it over and over and over. But, going back to the musical thing, once you get your lines learned in a play, you're there.
Absolutely. You just have to do it.
But I can't see doing a tap dance, bring on the mouse, bring on, I can't see that at all.
Let the pitter-patter of the mouse come up on the stage.
Yeah, rah, rah, rah. I just... And my character, oh my goodness, I can't imagine what kind of a nasty song my character would sing. Oh my goodness.
That would actually be a lot of fun. Let's write the song that she would.
Yeah, the organic feel you're describing, which is, I think, what you're describing, this is set these few things. This is what, as the director, Michael will say, I want to set this, and however it pans out is okay, and let the organic feel happen, and let the actors connect. And you can feel that's what's so fun, to have these people you've never met before. The characters, however, have met long ago.
Oh, yes. They have a
So you have this person you're portraying that's had this year's relationship with this person now that you're acting with, you don't know, but you have to portray characters that know each other for years. And then at a moment, and you know when it is, you feel that connection that even though we've only known each other for a few weeks, we've connected as if we've known each other for years.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful moment. It's fun to experience that organic flavor.
It is.
And I was going to say one more thing. Okay. You cut me off. Now it's my turn.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So now we're even.
I'm just going to back off here and let you two go.
But when you were talking about the rehearsal process and concern, and I remember having concern a couple of years ago in January, we performed the 39 Steps at Brigham's Playhouse.
That's a bit of a precise one.
It is, and it's done with 2 ladders, 3 crates, 4 planks, and a sheet as everything. And you have to create all the sets with these items. And the way we did it, we only had 15 days. We started 15 days before we opened with the first rehearsal.
Right.
And Jamie Young actually was in the show with me. We played the clowns. I played 20 characters. He played 21, and then the other ones had a couple characters. That and different accents, and trying to do this and do it in 15 days, and that was stressful. I was the guy. I'm really nervous. I'm stressed about this. And our director chose to do a lot of organic, non-show related work. We rehearsed 5 hours. It was about 2 hours of the first time. Like, all I could think of was, we need to get to the show. And we didn't. But by the time we opened, I understood the importance of that organic work.
Right.
And so by the time we got to this point and the show was ready to open, it worked beautifully. I had to trust the process. I had to put my beliefs on the back page and just trust the process and how wonderful it worked out. And this is similar. So, which is probably why you've not heard a thing from me, because I understand I've lived that process before, and it just turned out beautifully. And I'm feeling these moments you're describing, and how wonderful it is to connect with this mean mother, which isn't Jane at all, obviously, but how great that is to feel it. I don't have to act a whole lot because she gives it to me, and so great.
And when I was in Harvey, Wilford would always say, he says, "We don't want to see you act." He would tell everybody that. And then he would proceed to visit with us. He said, "Oh, that's the biggest thing. I don't like to see people act." And he was right.
Mm-hmm.
To me, there comes a point in the actor's head where you all of a sudden understand that character, and it's in your head, and you can do it. And you have that relationship. But you just can't do it overnight. You have to do your homework.
Oh, yeah.
And really work at it. But it will come. And I think that's what you were trying to say,
right.
Partially.
Exactly it, yes.
That you will establish that relationship, and people can feel that.
Right. Well, I'm going to take the conversation in a little bit different direction on this, bouncing off of this. Wilford Brimley says, and I hope you don't mind me quoting you, Mr. Brimley, if you are listening out here, but he doesn't want to see people act. I would like to submit that I do some of my best acting not on the stage. I do my best acting when I'm in front of a classroom. I do teach, at several different venues. And, you, Jane, you were a teacher for, you said 33 years. Mm-hmm. And Kelly, you're a dentist. And I'm sure there are times when you have to say, yeah, everything's okay. And, hey, calm down.
Yeah, and I actually teach as well. I go around the country and teach dental implants to other
I didn't
dentists
know that.
all over the nation. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
This is part of the purpose of this show, ladies and gentlemen. We get to know each other. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Let me ask you, do you find the same thing, like being in front of a classroom of younger students or a classroom of professionals who are working with you? Do you ever catch yourself acting a character?
Of course. You have to perform to some degree to not have everybody fall asleep on you.
Right.
You've got to pull the energy. You've got to do those same things. And if you don't, then you tank it. Right? Yeah. You've got to, the teachers I had in school, which ones did I like the most? Which classes did I look forward to going to? The funny ones, the ones that made it interesting.
Right.
And a perfect example of that is there was at a dental conference 2 courses that I attended. One that was called Sex and Laughter. And it was described, just the opposite sex, how they interact and laughing. And so I thought this will be a nice break from all the dental classes. Another one that was oral pathology, so lesions in the mouth. Does that sound like something that's going to be everybody's in line for? So I went to these classes, the Sex and Laughter one. The first thing the instructor said was, if you came here expecting to laugh a lot, you're in the wrong class. We're going to talk about how people interact and very deadpan. The first break, I was out of there. Found another class.
Give me the lesions.
The oral pathology. I'm like, I need to do this because I need to keep up on this. I'm just going to go do my time. I'll suffer through it, but I'll learn the material again and be reminded of it. And this instructor, he was a college professor at one of the dental schools. He was so funny. I couldn't wait till the afternoon part of the class. It was so entertaining, and you would never think that subject could be entertaining, but the way he approached it. So yeah, of course, I think the teachers, you have to perform, you have to act, right? What about you?
Well, my experience is entirely different. I used to teach freshman junior high.
Oh wow!
And if you're not performing, you're dead. They will kill you. And I remember
you have survived.
I have survived. Look, I taught stagecraft. And I gave them hammers and nails and saws and turned my back on them. So I feel brave. But anyway, I had to teach 9th grade English as well. And part of the requirement, nationwide as a matter of fact, they have to read Romeo and Juliet. So I would say, okay, we're going to read it out loud. And it's Shakespeare. And they would just have a fit. But after about the 3rd day, they got the hang of it. And they really liked it. So when it came to the sword fight scenes, I passed out, these, when your Christmas wrapping paper gets done, that tube, I'd save them. We'd have sword fights and act out the scene. We'd act out the scene. I taught them the dance that Romeo and Juliet did, the hand dance. We'd go out in the hall and dance, the dance that they did when they met one another. And then the day that they died, I cleared off my desk and they died. And it was a lot of fun. They learned. And then when we did To Kill a Mockingbird, I thought that was so important, this book. That's one of my favorite. I read it out loud to all my English classes. And I had voices for all the characters. And I had done it so much that some of the passages I had memorized. And the kids loved to be read to. It didn't matter. I discovered that 14-year-old kids like to be read to, and they like that book. And so you have to act. I had to every day to keep their attention, to keep the girls from combing their hair and writing notes and the boys from being, boys. But, it's a junior high. It's a whole different animal. But I had to every day. So I understand what you mean. So, and I look back and I think, oh, my gosh. I had the energy then. I wouldn't now.
Well, one of the things that I absolutely love about theater, and when I'm talking to my students about it, they get very caught up in, oh my gosh, I have to take this opportunity now or I'll never get an opportunity again. All three of us sitting here in the studio have other things that we do as well. I mean, Kelly, you're a dentist, for Pete's sake. That takes a little bit of schooling, a little bit of time. And like you were saying, keeping up with things. Jane, you were a teacher for 33 years. Yeah. I've been teaching at, various institutions and things, as well as all three of us being actors and directors and working on art and such. And what I think is so wonderful for everybody, all of our listeners out there, art is not going away.
No.
For us, theater is not going away. It's always going to be there. So there are no missed opportunities that are the end for any of us.
And it's interesting. What we do for fun, we go to plays for fun. And a lot of my friends don't understand that. Why don't you go to the ball game? Oh, no. We have to go to the play.
Yeah, that's right.
I have to admit, me wearing the baseball cap here, I like to go to a ball game, I'll tell you.
Well, I do too. I do too. But if I had the choice, I would go to a play and then catch the ball game later on.
You have to marry the two. I have season tickets to the BYU football games.
Matter of fact, we had some rehearsal issues with
that's
that.
Right, that's right. That's right. And last year, I don't even remember what show I was busy doing. I was in something. But my daughters, ever since they were little, have gone with me, and my son, who's on his mission now, and they've just loved doing both. But last year, while I was in the show and I couldn't go to the games, I think we made 1 or 2 of the 6 home games, my daughter made me promise, Dad, you can't have any conflicts this year. We have to go to the games. So Flowers is one conflict. There's one game, but that daughter's in the show with us, my daughter Lindsay, right?
We'll keep her busy.
That's right. But the other 5 games, I made sure that, nope, I've got to make sure we go to the games because, and when we go, it's not, they know. It doesn't matter if they win or lose. I told them long ago, if they have to win for us to have fun, then we're not going. It's about the experience.
Right.
Being together and doing that, and which is why we do theater. It's about the experience.
That's why I like to travel, too.
And you just got back from Scotland. And,
yeah, I did. Oh, that was an experience, driving on the other side of the road. I think there is one lady still yelling at me on the curbs.
She hates Americans because of you. I want you to know.
My driving. But it was beautiful, and we've talked about this Stirling Castle. And
oh yes, yeah.
We went to the military festival at Edinburgh with their bagpipes, and oh my goodness, that was wonderful, and it was just a wonderful experience. And before that, we spent about 4 days in London, and we went to the changing of the guard, things like that. So that's what I do with my extra time. Love to travel.
Gotcha. And you've got some wonderful, wonderful stories about that. I do have to say, we are almost out of time here.
Oh, really?
Already?
We actually only have about a little over 2 minutes. And I want to say that this format of this show, this is a prime example of why it's so much fun, getting to know people, and not just because they're artists, but knowing that they do participate in art. Just as, Kelly, you direct and you act and you do dentistry, which I think is an art, the
right.
sculpture and such.
Right.
Sculpting those teeth. If it
Really?
weren't for people like you, my gosh, we'd all have gum mouths going on out there. And, Jane, having been a teacher, but you've acted in so many different styles of shows and convinced me that you were one of the crustiest human beings on the planet.
I'm so glad.
Until I actually got to know you. That's what this is all about. Now, that's what this radio show is all about. But please know, I think we can all be in agreement, and you're welcome to disagree. I may turn your mic down if you disagree. No, but that's what going to the theater is. It's about having a conversation. It's about getting to know people. Jane, you mentioned dealing with someone else's life for a while. And in the theater, we do deal with extraordinary circumstances. If you don't know the story of Flowers for Algernon, I'll let you know. It's about an experimental operation that gets done on a man whose IQ is actually very, very low. And it increases his intelligence and increases his complexity. And I'm not going to tell you what happens, but it is absolutely heartbreaking to see someone go through the trials that come, that you would think it would be a wonderful thing. But there are a lot of emotional trials, and that's what we're trying to capture in Flowers for Algernon. Now, just to repeat the performance information of that, we do open on Thursday, September 13th, and that'll be at 7:30 p.m. You can get tickets by calling the Center for the Performing Arts at Kayenta. You can find us online. Or you can even contact me here at On the Arts, and I'll hook you up. But also, that's Thursday and Friday, the 13th and 14th at 7:30 p.m. And then also on Saturday the 15th at 2 p.m. And then the following week, Wednesday through Saturday at 7:30 p.m. with yet another matinee at 2 o'clock on Saturday the 22nd. Jane and Kelly, thank you so much for being a guest with me here today.
You.
Thank you.
And you two are welcome on the show anytime.
Well, thank you.
To let everyone else know, we do have an exciting lineup of artists coming on all the way. We are, I'm happy to say, booked solid through November. And we have people constantly asking to join us from 4 to 5 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Until the next time that we're able to chat, please do remember us, remember artists, and keep your focus on the arts.